I was 8 years old when I drew that. Now that was pretty cool because my dad was a commercial fisherman and he had a nice little boat called the Alice. And it was a neat little boat, and it was my dad's first boat. And it was a gasoline boat. That probably doesn't mean much yet, but it will in my story. So let's take a look. There we are, me and my sister. Bobby was my sister, and she was older than me by a few years. And that meant she got to go fishing all summer with my dad before I did. That wasn't fair. So when she was about 9, or maybe 10-ish, is when this story happened. And she had just gotten out of school, and she was going to spend the whole summer with Daddy on the boat. That'd be pretty cool. And I got to stay home, and take care of stuff at home. Well, the fishing boats are kind of cool. This gasoline fishing boat had to be gassed up with gasoline. And I'm saying gasoline because a lot of fishing boats have diesel in them. And diesel is a lot harder to catch on fire. Gasoline catches on fire really easy. Well, it was getting time to go out for their first trip, and everybody was settled down, and they brought the boat up to the fueling dock, and it was the last boat to be fueled that day. And so the guy said, just stay there, because Dad was going to leave early in the morning before the fuel dock opened. And so they stayed, they fueled up the tank, and they stayed right there at the dock all night long. Well, that's what a fishing boat is like. It has 2 layers. There's a top layer where you do your fishing and where you look out and see where you're steering. And then there's the down below part. Well, down below is kind of important because there's several things that happen in the middle. There's a galley. You know what a galley is? That's where you cook and do things with making food and eat. That's where you eat. That's right. That's the galley. But way out in the bow, what is that you see out in the bow? That's where they tuck the bunks. Because when you're a fisherman, you stay overnight lots of times. And so you cuddle up to one of those pillows in the bow. But the bow kind of pointy, And so your bed would kind of come to a little pointy. So that was a good place to sleep. And my sister was sound asleep this morning. And Daddy was getting ready to leave, pull off from the fishing dock, or the fueling dock, and go fishing. Well, he smelled a little smell of gasoline. See that yellow thing there? That's the engine room. And see how the stairs, see the stairs there? Okay, so you had to go by the galley, and then you went into this little room that was the engine room. And he kind of smelled fumes. Well, they were right by the fueling dock, and he had just fueled up. And he had left the doors open, but he smelled it, and he thought, well, Bobby, she was sound asleep in her bunk up there in the bow. So he reached over and pushed on a button, and boom, there was a big explosion fire. Well, the explosion wasn't so big because the tanks were full. So it just made a big whoo and a big fire, and my daddy was on fire. And my sister was in the bunk, and there was fire between her and the stairs. This was not a good situation because she was sound asleep, and when she woke up, that's what she saw. She saw flames roaring behind our daddy, who was on fire. And what do you think you would do if you saw that when you wake up first thing in the morning? You would do the same thing she did. You would crawl closer and closer to the bow. You would try to get as far away from that as you can. And she did. She crawled and crawled till she was clear into the bow. And Daddy's saying, Bobby, get out. We have to get out. We have to get out. And she's screaming and crying. And it's very scary. My dad saw clothes are on fire and his skin is burning. And he knows one thing. He has to get her out. Do you think she can get out through the bow? She's going to have to go back and get out through those stairs, isn't she? Well, my daddy asked Jesus to help him because he couldn't get Bobby out. He tried to get her out, and then finally he was able to get her to come down. He got her down by the stairs, and by then the fire was really hot on the railing of the stairs, and my dad is on fire. It's starting to kind of calm down a little bit, and he pushed her, and he got her to go up the stairs. And they got out on the deck, And when they got on the deck, my dad discovered that he was burned quite badly. In fact, his hands, his arms were burned, his clothes were burned off, his shirt was burned, his face was burned really badly. He had second and third degree burns all over him. How many burns do you think Bobby had? A couple on one hand where she grabbed onto the railing. That was it. God had helped protect her and got her right through the flames and up the stairs and out. And my daddy and Bobby got off the boat and they watched it burn up. It was a very sad day. And especially was sad was my dad being hurt so bad. Well, God is really cool. Not only did he watch after Bobby, he knew that this old fisherman needed to have some help too. And so they took him home, that's the beginning of summer, and the doctor told him what to do with my dad. Now, normally you'd keep him in the hospital, but my folks didn't have very much money, and this was the beginning of the fishing season. So there wasn't a lot of money in the bank. And so the doctor said, lay him down on a fresh sheet and open the windows in the bedroom. His back wasn't burned, just his front. And his ears were burned real bad, and his head. And take strips of gauze and dip it in Vaseline and coat it on this gauze and just put that all over him. And then ask God to help him heal. Oh, as a little girl, I can remember the smell. My daddy home all summer long, getting healed up. The really neat thing also, I'll tell you, there's another part of this story, which is there wasn't any money to pay for a doctor. There wasn't any money for the rest of the year because that was how my dad made a living, and it was once a year, and that was during the fishing season. So come that fall, 2 different times, we were in the house and wondering what we were going to eat. And my mom prayed, and we all prayed because there was no food left. And 2 different times we went to the porch. There was a great big box of beans and rice and lentils, and we had food. Now, we don't know to this day where it came from, but I do, don't you? The angels sent it, huh? What I wanted you to know was God knows who you are and where you are and loves you no matter where you're at, even if you're in the bow of a boat sound asleep and you have no idea what's about to happen. God loves you and knows where you are. And you know what? God even cares for old people like my dad. Helped him get well. And you know, he ended up with just a few scars on his ears and a little bit on the back of his hands. It was a miracle. And so I thank you for hearing my story about my sister.